Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. You are listening to Branded a Killer. My name is Brandy Breeding. I want to first and foremost tell everybody thank you very much for tuning in and listening to my episodes that I've been downloading. I plan on, once everything gets into order, since this is my first season of my crime series, Branded a Killer, I plan to do one every week. I've been dropping every case that I've actually done in the past couple months. I've been going ahead and putting it on here just to get it out of the way. This is a newer case and I just started doing this, so that's why I'm going to go ahead starting from today. Every episode's going to be once a week. Every Thursday I will upload the podcast and it will be available for you as soon as I upload it. I just want to say thank you guys so much for, being patient. I know that some of the video or some of the audio and stuff is probably not perfect, and I know that I'm not the greatest yet, but I plan on being. So just hold on tight and stick in there with me, and we'll make it to the top. Now, today's case is going to be about Brenda Sue Schaefer. Now, this is not that normal of a story. Brenda Sue Schaefer was actually murdered by her boyfriend, Melvin Ignatow. Now, you would think that would just be, a slam dunk shut case, it's over with, but that's not how this is. Melvin Ignatow actually stood trial and basically got found not guilty, and then shortly after he admitted to everyone that he is the one that actually killed Brenda. And then it goes into this long thing about double jeopardy, and it just gets very crazy. And I think in all that craziness we forget that a beautiful woman lost her life, and not that she was beautiful, she was a loving woman. She had a big family, and today we're going to break down and get into everything about that case. So you ready? Strap your big britches on. Let's jump into it. Brenda Sue Schaefer was born to Essie and John Schaefer in Louisville, Kentucky at St. Anthony's Hospital, April 25th, 1952. A little background on Louisville. Louisville was founded in 1778 by George Rogers Clark. It's one of the oldest cities west of the Appalachian Mountains. We are also known for the Kentucky Derby, and it's been going on for a long time. I know that I should know these things, but you know what? I focus so much on the people that sometimes I forget little bitty things I need to pay attention and look up, like how long's the Derby been going? And I'm pretty sure people are screaming at the podcast now like, Brandy, duh, you should know this, you're from Louisville, but I never really got into the Derby and everything. Oh my God, I know, such a shocker. But what people don't really understand is that, I lived by Churchill Downs for like most of my life, and it's not what it is on TV. Normally the Churchill Downs area is kind of like hood, like it's really hood. Like during Derby, you ain't gonna see all that. They broadcast the fun stuff. They don't broadcast all the craziness that actually goes on there 24/7. There's more police presence there during the Derby than there ever is, and that's the high crime area. That's what's so crazy. But we will keep going about I could talk about this all day long, but I'll keep on track this time, and we'll continue with Brenda Sue Schaefer. Brenda's family was a huge German and Catholic family, and they had been in Louisville for 3 generations. And she lived in the nicer part of Louisville in St. Matthews. A little background on St. Matthews. St. Matthews is like the better part of Louisville, where the more wealthier people live at. You will see probably 2 people household in that, meaning that you will see both parents in a household there, as in if you come to the west end of Louisville, you're going to see more of single moms or single dads. It's just more wealthier out there. That's just as much as I can put it out. You made it in Louisville when you can actually go out there and buy a house, or live out in that kind of area. I've never felt comfortable in that area. Not that saying that people made me feel uncomfortable. I think that it was more of a deep down. I think every place has a place like that. Every city has a place where you have, like, all right, you have like the ghetto, you have like the semi ghetto, and you have like a middle place where it's not too bad, and then you have like the very uppity up. Well, in this part of town, it's St. Matthews. It's like very uppity up, and it's like on your way out of Louisville also. If you're heading towards Cincinnati, you're going to go through St. Matthews if you're coming through Louisville. When Brenda was born, she was the baby sister of 5 siblings, 4 brothers and 1 sister. But before Brenda, her mother Essie had a stillbirth, and because of her religion, she couldn't actually have induced labor. She had to basically wait for the baby, which was decomposing, and she had to have it on her own because of their religion. She was Catholic. They didn't believe in that. They considered that it would be abortion. So she had to have a baby before Brenda on the floor in her house. And when Brenda came, it was said that she was very close to Brenda, I guess because Brenda filled that hole that she had having to go through something as traumatic as watching you deliver a baby you know is dead. That is very traumatic. And they say, I know a religion comes a lot in play with things, and these people were very religious, and as are a lot of other people, tend to be very strong on their beliefs, and that's how this family was. As a child, Brenda was very shy, quiet, soft-spoken, avoided confrontation, and just wanted everybody to basically get along. And in 1968, at 16 years old, it was said that she was very beautiful, like drop-dead gorgeous, beautiful brown hair, beautiful big brown eyes, and she always had a smile on her face. She had some self-esteem issues, she was very self-conscious. She always picked at herself, and just, I guess she never felt like she was worthy or beautiful when she actually was. And at 16, she met Pete Van Pelt, and he was 19 at the time, and that would be her only high school love. It was said that Pete Van Pelt was possessive and very controlling, very narcissistic, kind of like gaslighted her, kept her at arm's length, and then kind of played with her mind a lot. But there was just something about him, she just couldn't stay away from him, even though when people was trying to tell her, like, he's not good for you, he don't treat you good, she still loved him and wanted to be with him. And he asked her to marry him her senior year, and they were starting to plan the wedding and do everything. Brenda was really excited, and when Brenda would graduate, that's what she wanted to do, was have a really big wedding and have her family there. And of course her parents kind of wanted her to wait it out, because being 8, coming out of high school and getting married is not what you need to do. You need to get to know them before you jump. Even if you've been with somebody for that long of a time, when you're that young, it just is not a good idea to right out the gate get married. Like, why not just wait? And that's basically what her family was saying to her. And but tragically, on May 2nd, Brenda's brother Jack Schaefer, who was a police officer for St. Matthews, was brutally murdered in the line of duty. And this tore the whole family apart. And they were just really, really tore up about it. So her senior year of high school, she was having a really rough time, being depressed, being sad. Just, could you imagine? You think one minute you're about to plan a wedding, everything is going good, and then boom, your brother's brutally murdered. And they said that he was brutally murdered. Like, somebody literally came up and shot him 3 times in the head. It was really crazy. Brenda and Pete would eventually postpone the wedding, but they didn't postpone it too far. They made it for the following December. And after they got married, they would have typical arguments, but mostly it was about finances. It was said that Pete was very living outside of his means, that he really only made $8,600 a year. like $8,600 a year, and he would basically just blow his money on silly stuff. But also, they argued about their sex life because Brenda was literally very conservative. She didn't really, not that she didn't like having sex. I think a lot of it, again, goes to religion. I think she had a lot of Catholic guilt. It kind of what made her feel a certain way. And she also told her friends that it was just the way that Pete went by getting with, basically, the foreplay part of it. She just felt that they had both had different needs. And this would be an everlasting theme in her every relationship that she had. So in March of 1976, not a shocker, her marriage to Pete Van Pelt only lasted 4 years at that point. The separation was really hard on Brenda because of the religious aspect of her life. Her father was very religious. Her family was very religious, and they did not believe in divorce. So when she divorced, she kind of started having that Catholic guilt again and feeling like a failure. And even her father said, "You made your bed, you need to lay in it." But eventually she ended up moving back in with her parents. She ended up getting her name changed back to Schaefer, and then her next relationship was with a man named Jim Rush, and it would have lasted 8 years. And it was said that she was really in love with Jim. Everything was perfect. The money aspect of the relationship, they got along pretty well. The only issue was that he was a severe alcoholic. So not a shocker, when that relationship ended, she ended up moving back with her parents, or she got a condo at that time also, but she was mostly at her parents'. Her friend Joyce told her that it was time for her to get back out there in the dating world after Jim, and she decided to hook her up with a friend named Melvin Ignatow. On their date together, Brenda, Melvin Ignatow, Joyce Smallwood, and Bob Davis, they all went to Melvin's boat to hang out and go for a boat ride. His boat was located in Prospect, Kentucky, and it was called the Motion Lotion. If that gives you any idea how crazy this guy is, that was the name of his boat. It was said that Brenda had a good time. Melvin was nice to her. He wasn't like the greatest looking guy. He was about 6'3", about 200 pounds. He was a big guy, but he was a little bit older. She didn't really think too much of it. She liked him. He was nice. And after the date, he said that she should come out again and go on the boat. It was said that he was physically unattractive, but she liked him because he was sweet and listened to her. So she decided she was going to start dating Mel Ignatow. So we're going to do a little background on Melvin Henry Ignatow. He was born on March 24th in 1938 in Louisville, Kentucky, and he was an average middle-class kid who grew up in the 1950s. And back then it was kind of segregated, but not like how you would think of race. It was segregated more of your class, meaning if you had money or if you didn't. Back then, if you didn't have like family money or an abundance amount of wealth, you basically didn't mean anything to anybody. So the hard-working blue-collar men were basically treated like they were nothing. And when Melvin was growing up, he was basically just your normal kid. He didn't really do a lot of things. It says in high school that he ran track, but he really didn't have a whole lot of friends. He had a couple friends. He dated a little bit. It really wasn't that deep into his past, and I couldn't really find out so far deep into his past. I really wanted to, because I feel like when people do horrendous crimes like he did, I feel like that they kind of get that from their past, and always it's either linked to the mother or something about the father. It really depends, but I was betting that it had something to do with his mom, from the way that he liked to dominate and do things to women. But Melvin's mother was a nurse. His father was a reporter, but he also had quit doing that and had several failed businesses. And at one point, he owned a grocery store, and they lived in the back of it, making it even more embarrassing for Melvin. And then one time, he bought a house and then filed bankruptcy immediately after, and they had to be pushed into a like small apartment, and Melvin was severely embarrassed by this. He basically grew up thinking that, money was everything, and that if you didn't have money, you was a nobody. He may have got this, idea probably from his dad, from the way that his dad worked a lot of different jobs and got into different businesses to be successful. I think that impression was put down upon him from his father. In 1960, Melvin married Sharon Kipton, and it was said to be a brutal relationship for her, that this man, Melvin Ignatow, would actually treat her and their 3 kids that they had together extremely bad. It was a very brutally abusive relationship by him. That it was said that Melvin would just treat her really bad. He was very controlling, very self-centered, dominated her completely. He would punish his wife Sharon with anal sex if she did anything wrong. Say if something was a mess in the house, or the house had to be spotless. If it was dirty, she would get in trouble for it. I mean, it would turn into basically what every typical story of abuse turns into. And it's so sad, because back in those days, it wasn't ever considered abuse. They just considered that in the normal ways back then. And nowadays, you could go to jail for half the stuff that he even did on a daily basis to women, to his wife. And you could tell in that marriage that he hated women. It's like he considered to use them as I would say a object, and he treated them like they were nothing. And he liked to punish them. He liked to inflict pain and watch their face as they had pain on their face. He was never affectionate to Sharon in any way, or the kids. He had compulsive disorders, where he would flip out if the house was even a tiny bit of a mess. Sharon said that he always controlled the money, and he was allowed to spend as much money as he wanted to, when he wanted to, at any time. But any time that she had to use money or do anything, she had to basically beg or ask for it, and it would turn into an issue. And they had to shop at Kmart, while Mel got to spend money anywhere he wanted to. It was said that when she did go to leave him, typically a lot of people don't realize, but being in a custody, case with somebody that's narcissistic, they tend to know what your perfect thing, what you love the most. And narcissists tend to take what you love the most and use that against you. Any information they get from you, they get that in the beginning when y'all first meet. A narcissist will be the nicest guy you've ever met in your whole life. You'll think, where has this man been all my life? Oh my God, where has this man been? And then the true person comes out later in the relationship. But by then, you're so into thinking that, it comes on gradually. It's not something that happens like as soon as you meet the person. It just gradually comes on. That's the easiest way to explain that kind of relationship. Like one day you think it's like one day's everything is fine, and the next it's just going to be abusive, but it gradually comes on. It's little things that add up over time, as in a narcissist will make you feel like you're crazy, that you're wrong. When you go to confront them about anything, it's not going to be just, okay, here, I did wrong, I'm sorry. They don't like saying sorry. They don't like admitting fault, because they are so broken inside, there's nothing that can fix that person. Narcissists cannot be fixed. There's no cure for him or her. They literally go off of everybody else, and they will destroy anybody around them just to make themselves feel better. And I know I tend to get off subject right here on this, but I want people to understand that A lot of people's like, well, why didn't she just get up and leave? If she saw these signs and her whole family was telling her, hey, this guy's no good for you, don't be with him. You can tell the type of person she was. She was a very submissive person. She was a very quiet person. She didn't like conflict. She didn't want to be, starting a lot of drama, I guess. But when you're in that kind of an abusive relationship, it doesn't dawn on you you're even in it. It's like something that's out of nowhere. Even the most strongest women that I've met in my life have been through the most horrible shit. And even with a narcissist, they can turn anybody into a weak person because they strip away the meaning of you. And when you're done with a narcissist, there will be nothing left of you, and you have to rebuild everything that you ever had, mentally, physically, everything, because you spent your whole relationship with the person building them up, fixing them, because in a narcissist relationship, it is always about them. It's never about you. And when it is about you, you best bet your ass that it will turn into, if any day is about you, it will turn into an argument. It will turn into a problem. He's the person, or the person of the other that is the narcissist in the relationship, they get jealous if the attention's not on them or not about them. They don't know how to just take a whole day and let it be about somebody else. They can never be about somebody else because they're too busy worrying about the perception of them, the perception of who they are. They don't really love the people they're with. They only love, they think they do, but they don't. They don't know how to love because they're so used to being how they are. There's no fixing it. It just literally is. If you are in a narcissistic relationship, you don't see it coming. It's something, like I said, that happens gradually coming up. And that's what happened in her case. With his first wife, it's the same. They always pick the same type of women. Good, strong, beautiful women that are independent in their brain. They think that, I met the man of my dreams. This is perfect. Where's he been? But what I've always learned is what's too good to be true normally is. And if you ever are in a relationship that you feel like you can't get out, I want you to know that there is a ton of places you can go to. And at the end of this, I'll put in some numbers you can call if you are in that kind of relationship and you need to have help. I want you to understand that mental abuse is also abuse. That you do not need to be being called any kind of names, bitch, whore, slut. All those are names that your husband should never ever be saying to you, or wife, or anybody. Nobody should disrespect you, even if it's as a joke, even if it's said, oh well, we're just playing it, this is how we play. No, somebody is tearing you down, and love does not hurt. That's one thing that I had to learn in my past, that love is not pain. And growing up the way that I did, I always felt that, there's going to be a little pain with love. But honey, real true love, there's no pain. It's not painful. It's not going to put harm at you. You're not going to feel like shit 24/7 if it's real love. If you're constantly feeling like shit 24/7, you need to get out. You need to get away, because there's a reason why you are. And it's probably your significant other making you feel those things. But like I said, like Sharon in this case, she married Mel. I'm sure that in the beginning, and also with Brenda, he was a very enticing man. He was very sweet. He did gifts. He was over top. He listened to her. He did all these things. But once they get into that normal groove with you, and they can take the mask off, that mask is on in the beginning. Once that mask is off and you see who he really is, it's over with. Once they know that you know who the fuck they are, really, and that is a scared, lonely, just downright horrible person inside, there is nothing inside. There's no feeling. They don't feel nothing. They don't feel what you feel. They don't feel, hey, this is sad, maybe I shouldn't do this. They just don't have that in them. People with that much damage, they need to just never be with anybody. And I know that sounds so crazy, but when you see those red flags, you need to run. And I mean run. If your kids are involved, run, because all it's going to do is eventually it's going to turn into a very crazy relationship with abuse, and then sometimes your kids get put into it, and then it's just a really big mess. But what happened here is when she went to go divorce him, because he is such a narcissist, he had everything already planned one step ahead of her. And back then there was, nobody heard of a dad getting custody, but somehow he did. When she left him, she couldn't even take her kids because he was smarter. He knew. And I'm not saying that all narcissists are smarter than anything, but I'm saying that they have a level of thinking that you could never do somebody as dirty as what a narcissist could do to somebody. And if you witness somebody, say you get with a new guy and you see how he is treating his ex or somebody that he actually had a kid with, and you see the way he treats that person, if it's horrible, if he talks mad shit about her, says she's this and she's that, then you know right then and there that man is not worth shit. Because ain't no real man gonna sit up and talk about the mother of his kid as being a fucking anything but, okay, she's a good mom, that's it, and it should be over with. So people need to understand that. So Sharon, she couldn't get away. She finally did get, away from him, but she lost everything. And I sympathize with that, because I know as a mother how that feels, being in any relationship, when you have mixed kids in different relationships, and then you feel, you're split. What does your kids do? And I couldn't imagine what his kids were thinking. Like, the mother is the one that takes care of them all the time. Could you imagine a selfish, self-centered person just being the father? Somebody that never even messed with the kids, somebody that never even was around the daily habits of the kids. They use the kids. Narcissist people use kids. They don't love. I know that sounds crazy. It's more of a makes them look good kind of thing. It's not, oh, I love her so much. It's not that. They don't feel that. They fake that. They really do. They fake that they have these feelings. I think they have a protective, controlling aspect over their own kids, and that's what it is. And it pushes you to make you think that it's love, but honey, it's not. So back onto the story. Sorry I had to get into that, but it's the truth. So she ends up leaving Mel, and it said that Melvin, and by this time Melvin's getting out doing things. He had a house in the East End somewhere, and it was said that he spent like $25,000 on his bathroom, getting it remodeled. Everything was about him. I think when it comes to men like that it just gets like out of whack. They don't know how to act or how to treat people. So what they do is they treat people good in the beginning, and in the end they end up not treating you, good at all. But the thing is with Brenda, she was a very sweet and impressionable woman. She didn't really, think that, he was a bad guy at first. She thought he was sweet, he listened to her, and he did all those things like that. So when her and Ignatow started dating, he had a Corvette. When Brenda and Melvin started, basically being around each other, he had a comfortably good-sized home. He had his Corvette. And at that time, it was said that Brenda was slightly materialistic. She wanted the nicer things. And little did Brenda know that Ignatow would become increasingly protective and possessive of her. The Schaefer family became hateful of Ignatow, like hated him, thinking he was controlling her and that he was narcissistic. Brenda confided in Smallwood about her bizarre sexual fantasies that Ignatow would talk about. Ignatow would often talk about having group sex anal sex, strapping Brenda to a bed. Brenda would never fully consent to these things, although he would talk about it all the time with her. Ignatow also convinced Brenda to take sex tablets, mysterious pills he did not explain, what they were. He would just give them to her, and she would wake up naked, having no recollection of what the hell was going on. And because of this, Brenda starts, to worry about her fucking safety. She's like, what the fuck? Could you imagine going on a date with somebody and you wake the fuck up and you've been with this person for a while, so your guard's down, and you wake the fuck up and you've been passed out and raped? Like, you don't know what the hell's going on? But Mel always found it, a way to explain it out. And I know that sounds crazy. People are like, are you fucking serious? How do you explain that? He would just find a way. And in those relationships, they can manipulate you. Narcissists can manipulate you and make you think shit that you would never even think. They just throw that little seed in there and in your head. But she found it really hard to get away from Melvin. And Smallwood and the Schaefer would tell her to leave, but Brenda would never leave. Throughout their 2-year relationship, Brenda worked as a secretary and assistant for the dentist Dr. William Spaulding, and Brenda was a hard worker. Like, she worked for 12 years there, and she worked for Spaulding, rarely taking days off, working hours if necessary. Spaulding was really fond of Brenda. He admired her hard-working personality, illuminating appearance, and everybody loved the Schaefer family in general and Brenda. But one thing that Spaulding did not like about Brenda was her ongoing relationship with Mel, and he told her this all the time, that she needed to get away from him. And I think that everybody that's been in an abusive relationship, or any kind of abuse, mental, physical, sexual, anything, everybody around you sees the red flags before you do. So if your entire freaking family is telling you things ain't right, listen to them. If multiple people are telling you something's not right, man, you need to leave him. If they're telling you that, then something really isn't right. You need to listen. Because of this, Brenda, would just take it and be like, okay, it's fine. And one thing Spaulding told her was like, you just need to get away from it. Ignatow would often call Brenda at the office 2 or 3 times a day to complain to her or blow up on the phone over her about her being too social. Basically, if she talked to anybody too much long, Ignatow would flip out. Spaulding noticed Ignatow's controlling patterns and just hated him for it. And Brenda deserved better. Spaulding knew that, and he tried to explain that to her all the time. Ignatow was a traveling salesman, and he would often take trips to Tijuana, China and Taiwan. It was during these trips he would schedule all of his and Brenda's phone calls. And in advance to the trip, Brenda had to call him or answer the phone at specific times, and if he didn't, all hell would break loose, it was said. Ignatow was infamously known for being an annoying-ass salesman. He was persistent, not easy to escape, would never take no for an answer. And here's a fun fact. Most narcissists, they excel in selling careers. They are like the shit. They all have really good driven jobs. Like, they just do a lot better in sales positions. These qualities followed him outside of the workplace and into his relationship with Brenda, of course, and co-workers and Schaefer's family. It all made sense to Brenda. She needed to move on, Towards the end of the relationship, Brenda began to stick up for herself. She knew she wasn't happy, and the summer before she went missing, she met with Jim Rush, the guy she was with prior to Mel, that she was with for 8 years. She met with him multiple times to tell him awful stories about Ignatow. Brenda couldn't keep up with the sexual needs of his aggressive desire to be with Brenda all day, every day. Jim Rush told her to leave him, like everyone else did. On September 21st, Brenda phoned Rush to inform him that she had broken up with Ignatow. I want to throw in here that one time when Brenda went to Gatlinburg, Tennessee with Mel, she kind of woke up to him holding a chloroformed rag near her. And he was like, I just wanted you to relax. Are you fucking kidding me? And I'm pretty sure that was the straw that broke the camel's back, which, that is fucking insane. I mean, could you even imagine just laying there in bed, laying back with your boo? Next thing you know, you got chloroform in the face. Like, how? How? Like, for real. It's just crazy. So, when Brenda was telling Rush this, Brenda was just like, I don't want to be with him no more. But a week later, Brenda would come up missing. Ignatow, devastated about the breakup, decided to contact, and, as she's talking to Jim, saying, she's done with this. She wants to break up, or, he wants to break up, and he finds out. And Ignatow ends up contacting an old lover girl of his named Mary Ann Shore. The two dated years prior to Ignatow's relationship with Brenda, having a very romantic, exciting relationship. Shore was said, and I don't like saying this, Shore was a bigger woman, like, I wouldn't say fat, but I would say, like, thicker and wider and taller. But a lot of people, like, was on her about her looks, saying she was unattractive. She wore these thick glasses. She just looked mean to me when I looked at her. She just looked like she was just mad about something, I don't know. And desperate for attention, she loved, like, Melvin. So anything that he would say, she had, and he had his, basically she was wrapped around his finger. So whatever he said went. And she wanted Ignatow, and would often send, he would often send her notes and at work, and that were very sexual. Shore would have sexercise to remove her fatty tissue, of course conducted by Mel, is what he said, that they basically had sex so she could lose weight. Yeah. Mel Ignatow would also give Shore multiple choice quizzes that would reveal Shore's sexual preferences and tell stories about erotic, sexually disturbed people. In the end, Mel did not actually want her. He just wanted sex. Shore was devastated, desperate to have Mel back. She would do anything for him, even after the breakup. The two would meet, talk, then have sex, even when Mel was in other relationships, even when he was with Brenda. Being that Shore was a jealous person, she noticed how fond Mel was of Brenda, and Shore hated this. Shore hated Brenda. Brenda was everything Shore wasn't, and Shore knew she could never win Ignatow back as long as Brenda was in the picture. On September 25th of 1988, Brenda's car, a 1984 Buick Regal, was found abandoned along the westbound lane of Interstate 64 in the early morning. Jim Wesley, a Jefferson County police detective, had gotten the call about the car. Brenda had been reported missing the evening before, after not coming home after her date, which it was her taking Ignatow's jewelry to him, and she was never seen since. The missing persons case was handed over to Wesley by the St. Matthews Police Department. After arriving on the scene, Wesley evaluated the car. The car's right tire was flat. The car had been broken into. The radio was missing. Small amounts of blood scattered on the back seat and a handprint on the back tailpipe. All evidence that it might be just more than a missing persons case. Jim Wesley would become the head investigator on the case. And he said that he was involved from day one, from the moment that Brenda was reported missing. And Brenda's brother Tommy Schaefer and his girlfriend Linda Love went to the St. Matthews Police Department to report Brenda missing from her parents' house. He happened to be on duty with the Jefferson County Police Department as a homicide detective, and St. Matthew detective called him and said it was just too big for St. Matthews to handle, but they needed somebody to come check this out. See, the reason why they went to the police station is because at like 3, the day that she went to see Mel, her mother, ended up calling him at 11, and Melvin acted shocked and said, oh, well, she already said she was headed back to you, and she, with not wanting to get Brenda in any kind of trouble, she said, well, she's not here yet, but she was thinking that she was off with Jim somewhere, and she didn't want to get, put her business out there like that, basically. So at 3 a.m., Melvin calls her back and asks, "Oh, is he there? Is she there now?" And this is the day that she went missing, or the night. And her mother said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Are you sure?" Because he already knew she wasn't there. But the mom just didn't want to get to the middle of all that. So Essie and John Schaefer had been out all night worried about Brenda and just desperate to find her. And they called Jim Rush to help search for her during the early hours of Sunday morning. Mike, Essie, Jim, Brenda's brothers had no luck. Suspiciously enough, at around 4:17 a.m., Ignatow called the police to report Brenda missing. The next morning, everyone gathered at the Schaefer home to await to hear from the police. The most hysterical of them all, crying hopelessly, screaming at the walls, just acting a fool, was Mel Ignatow, more than what the parents were. Wesley knew Ignatow was the prime suspect. After all, that's the reason why her brother and his sister-in-law went ahead and came and reported her missing. Because they knew, he was the last person to see her. After all, he reported her eventually. He was the one that called first, but then they went to the St. Matthews police to tell them, hey, something else is up, So the family was just really, really upset, and they was really nervous about what was wrong. Brenda had agreed to go on a final date with Mel to establish closure of the relationship and return all the jewelry that he got her. At around 3 p.m., Ignatow was picked up by Brenda. Normally he would be driving his Corvette, but didn't drive due to the reported tire problems, he said. This didn't make any sense because Mel was driving his Corvette the following morning. They had driven around aimlessly and then went to Oxmoor Shopping Center around 6:30. The couple then drove to Captain Quarters around 9 p.m. And lastly, Brenda dropped off Mel, he said, at his mother's house around 11:30 p.m. And Mel then told Wesley he went to Skyline Chili near Plainview Shopping Mall Center and around midnight had ordered spaghetti with chili with a soft drink. Wesley, being clever detective he is, stopped by Skyline Chili and asked the manager if he had seen Mel Sunday morning. The manager told Wesley he didn't remember seeing him. On Monday morning, the assistant of Skyline Chili, Robert Longshore, told St. Matthews Police he had seen Mel that Sunday night, but no trace of Brenda. St. Matthews detective Jim Ennis went through several neighborhoods in the area, but nobody had seen Brenda. I asked, myself, like, what, when an abusive relationship's coming up, they got on this pretty quickly, and I bet you that Mel thought that they would honestly, that he would just get away with it, and he somewhat does, but I'm saying, like, I think that he thought in his head, oh, well, I'll have time to do what I need to do. So, Mel knew a lot more than what he's basically telling, and he tried to basically control the police in the FBI interview. Mel wanted to be the one asking the questions, and he was firing off questions from day one. He was asking so many questions because he wanted to know what the police knew, get inside their head. Concerning his experience with Ignatow, Wesley knew he would always get on my nerves, like calling me by my first name all the time and was acting like we were buddies. As the beginning of the case, it's always very hard when there's no, like, physical evidence, So there wasn't any link in Mel to the disappearance of Brenda. Yet, due to his suspicious actions and stories regarding his past relationship, Jim Wesley just could not help or believe that there was no anybody else but Melvin Ignatow. Wesley would make it his number one priority to lock him up. Like, he hated him. I think everybody that met him, eventually got to start knowing him, would hate him. So sadly, Brenda never come home after meeting Mel. And nobody knew exactly what had happened to this point. There was no other evidence. Nobody could find Brenda. And this went on for 14 months. I mean, God, could you imagine? Like your kid or your sister or somebody you love very deeply goes missing and you know who done it, but you have no proof, so there's nothing you can really do. You have to wait for justice to handle itself through the courts. But could you imagine? I couldn't imagine feeling that helpless and being hurt that bad and not knowing where my kid is. Like, even at a grown age, you're still going to worry about that. And I couldn't imagine what her mother and father and family was going through. But they did know that she met Ignatow with a bunch of jewelry. And they knew that something had happened. So they had that. Every time that Ignatow was questioned about it, he was like, I don't know nothing. She left me. I don't know, The police was not having it. The police was like, we know, basically telling him they're not dumb. They know it's him. That's what made him lawyer up. And the sad thing is, that's just the brutality of this murder. So I'm going to tell you the story of what happened exactly after she met up with Mel that day. Will be on my next episode. Make sure you tune in, and thank you guys so much for listening to my podcast. I really appreciate it. See you next week for the new episode. Make sure you guys don't forget to tune in every Thursday for a new episode of Branding a Killer. And next week we will continue with the conclusion of Brenda Sue Schaefer. Thank you so much.